Nobody ever suspects the person who brings flowers. That is exactly what made this story so terrifying. Daniel thought he had everything figured out. Good job. Beautiful wife. A mother who raised him alone after his dad walked out. A woman who cooked every meal from scratch, worked double shifts, and never once complained. And when his mother Margaret got sick, Daniel did what any loving son would do. He brought her home, set up a room, asked his wife, Vanessa, to help take care of her while he worked. He trusted her completely. He should not have. Because what was happening inside that house, behind those closed doors, while Daniel was at work, was something so cold, so calculated, that even the doctors did not see it coming. And by the time Daniel figured it out, his mother was days away from never waking up again. This is that story. Margaret was 67 years old, and she was the kind of woman who made strangers feel like family. She had this laugh, big and full, the kind that filled up a room. She had worked as a school cafeteria manager for over 20 years. Every kid in that school knew her name. She remembered birthdays. She slipped extra cookies onto trays when kids looked sad. She was that woman. When she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and early-stage kidney disease, her world got smaller. She could not drive anymore, could not manage her medications on her own. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor with no elevator, so that was out too. Daniel did not even hesitate. He converted his home office into a bedroom and said, "Mom, you're coming to live with us." Margaret cried when he said that. Happy tears. She should have saved those tears for later. Vanessa had always been polite to Margaret. Polite. That is the right word. Not warm. Not loving. Polite. The kind of polite that has a wall behind it. She smiled at the right moments, said the right things. But Margaret had always felt something she could never quite name. A coldness. Like being near a fireplace that only looked like it was burning. Daniel never noticed. He was working 60-hour weeks at a logistics company, trying to pay off the mortgage, trying to keep everything together. He was so busy keeping the ship afloat that he did not see what was happening below deck. Margaret moved in on a Tuesday in March. By April, she was getting worse. Her blood sugar levels were all over the place. The kidney specialist could not understand it. She was following her diet. She was taking her medications. On paper, everything looked right. But Margaret was getting weaker, more confused. She started sleeping 14, 15 hours a day. Her hands shook. She stopped finishing her sentences. The doctors adjusted her medications, changed her meal plan, ordered more tests. Everything came back inconclusive. What they did not know, what nobody knew, was that the problem was not medical. The problem was in the house. It started with small things that Margaret noticed but could not prove. Her medications were always given to her by Vanessa. Every morning, every night. Daniel had set up this system before he even talked to Margaret about it. He just assumed Vanessa would handle it, and Vanessa agreed without any pushback. Looking back, that should have been the first sign. Some days, Margaret felt like her pills were different. Not the shape. She could not always see clearly, but the feeling after. Some days, she felt foggy in a way that was different from her usual tired. Like her brain was wrapped in cotton. Like she was watching herself from far away. She mentioned it to Vanessa once. Casually. Said, "I feel strange today after my morning pills." Vanessa looked at her and said, "That's just your kidneys, Margaret. The doctor said you'd feel that way sometimes." And Margaret, who trusted her son's wife, who did not want to be a burden, who did not want to cause problems, she nodded and said okay. She said okay. That one moment breaks my heart every time I think about it. The thing about gradual harm is that it is almost invisible. The human body does not sound an alarm when things go wrong slowly. It just gets quieter and quieter until one day it stops. According to data from the National Center on Elder Abuse, approximately 1 in 10 Americans aged 60 and older has experienced some form of elder abuse. And the most heartbreaking statistic, nearly 60% of elder abuse is carried out by a family member or someone in the home, not strangers, people who were trusted. What Vanessa was doing fit into a pattern that elder care experts call caregiver-inflicted harm. It does not always look like violence. Sometimes it looks like a smile, a casserole, a hand on the shoulder when the doctor walks in. Vanessa had done her research. She knew exactly which of Margaret's medications, when given in the wrong dose, would make her confused, disoriented, too weak to advocate for herself. She had switched out certain pills, given Margaret the wrong doses on certain days. Not enough to kill her quickly, that would raise questions. just enough to make her decline. Slowly, steadily, in a way that looked like her illness was simply progressing. And every time Margaret tried to tell someone she did not feel right, Vanessa would get there first. She would speak to the nurses before Margaret could. She would pull doctors aside in the hallway and say, "She's getting more confused lately. I think the disease is progressing faster than expected." She would shake her head, with that look of concerned sadness that made everyone feel sorry for her. She was the perfect caregiver in everyone else's eyes. She was a nightmare behind closed doors. Daniel started noticing things around the end of May. It was not one big thing. It was a collection of small things that he kept pushing to the back of his mind. Because he was tired, because he trusted his wife, because it felt wrong to think what he was starting to think. His mother had stopped telling stories. That was the first thing that really got him. Margaret always had a story. She would talk about her childhood in Georgia, about the time she drove a broken-down car across 3 states to get Daniel to a college interview, about the regulars at the school who always tried to sneak extra servings of the mac and cheese. Now she just sat, stared at the TV. Sometimes she did not even know what day it was. The doctors called it rapid progression. Daniel called it terrifying. Then one evening, he came home early. A meeting had been canceled. He walked through the front door at 3 in the afternoon instead of 7 at night. Vanessa did not hear him come in. He heard his mother's voice first. Weak, confused. "That doesn't look like my pill. The yellow one. That's not the yellow one." And then Vanessa's voice. Flat, quiet, not kind. "Just take it, Margaret. You always do this." Daniel stood in the hallway and did not breathe. "I want to call Daniel," his mother said. "Daniel is busy. He doesn't need you bothering him. Take the pill." Daniel walked into the room. The look on Vanessa's face, just for a fraction of a second, was not guilt. It was not surprise. It was calculation. She recovered fast, smiled, said, "Oh, you're home early." But he had seen it. That split second before the mask came back on. He looked at his mother. Margaret looked at him the way a person looks at someone after being lost for a very long time. "Daniel," she whispered, "something is wrong." He did not say anything to Vanessa that night. He sat with his mother while she slept. He watched her breathing. And then, when Vanessa was asleep, he went through the medication bottles. He was not a pharmacist. He did not know exactly what he was looking at, but he took photos of everything. He wrote down every label, every dose, every date on the prescription versus the date on the bottle. And then he called his mother's kidney specialist the next morning and said he needed an emergency appointment. He brought everything. The doctor looked at the photos, looked at the bottles Daniel had brought in, asked a few very specific questions, and then he went quiet in a way that made Daniel's stomach drop. Some of Margaret's medications had been replaced. Not all of them, just enough. A blood pressure medication substituted, with something that looked similar, but had very different effects when combined. With her kidney disease, a diabetes medication given at the wrong time of day, which for someone with Margaret's condition, caused dangerous blood sugar crashes. It was not accidental. The pattern was too consistent to be accidental. The doctor called the hospital. Daniel called the police. Vanessa was at home when the officers arrived. She answered the door with a dish towel in her hand, like she was in the middle of making dinner. She was calm. She denied everything. She had an explanation for every medication, every label, every discrepancy. But Daniel had one thing she had not counted on. 3 weeks earlier, after a small package had gone missing from the front porch, Daniel had installed a small camera inside the house, just in the hallway. He had forgotten it was there, honestly. He had not even thought to check it. The detective asked about home cameras. Daniel remembered. The footage was not dramatic. It did not show anything violent. What it showed was quiet and methodical, and so much worse for being so calm. It showed Vanessa, on multiple occasions, opening Margaret's medication case, taking out certain pills, replacing them with others from a small plastic bag she kept at the back of the bathroom cabinet. She did it like she was packing a lunch. Routine. Efficient. The plastic bag was still there when officers searched the bathroom. Vanessa was arrested that evening. Margaret spent 11 days in the hospital. Her kidney function had dropped to a level that scared her doctors. The wrong medications had been quietly causing damage that would have been irreversible within another few months. The doctors told Daniel that if he had not caught it when he did, they were looking at full kidney failure, dialysis, possibly worse. Daniel sat next to his mother's hospital bed and held her hand and cried in a way he had not Cried since he was a child. He apologized for not seeing it sooner. He apologized for setting up a system that put her in harm's way. He apologized for being too busy. Margaret looked at him and said, "You came home. That's enough." For words that broke him completely open. Vanessa faced multiple charges including elder abuse, criminal neglect, and reckless endangerment. The case took 14 months to go through the court system. She was convicted on all counts. She is currently serving a 7-year sentence. In her trial, a neighbor testified that Vanessa had once said she felt like Margaret had taken over their home. A co-worker testified that Vanessa had spoken about inheriting money if Margaret passed away. Daniel had not known his mother had an updated will that named him, and by extension, his household, as her primary beneficiary. Vanessa had known. After Margaret was discharged, Daniel sold the house. They moved to a smaller place. Just the two of them, and Daniel hired a licensed, background-checked home health aide who reported to Margaret's doctor directly. He was never going to build a system on trust alone again. Margaret got better. Slowly, her kidney function stabilized. The fog lifted. She started telling stories again. First just little ones. And then the big ones, the Georgia ones. The school cafeteria ones. She made Daniel her famous sweet potato pie for his birthday that October. He said it was the best thing he had ever tasted. Not because of how it tasted, because of who was still there to make it. This story is real in all the ways that matter. The details have been changed to protect privacy. But the pattern, the trust, the slow harm, the person hiding in plain sight, that happens in real homes to real families right now. If someone you love is under another person's care, pay attention to the small things. Are they getting worse even though they should be stable? Are they confused in new ways? Do they seem afraid to speak up? Do they change when the caregiver enters the room? You do not need proof to ask questions. You just need to love someone enough to look a little closer. Daniel came home early one afternoon. That is all it took. One canceled meeting. One afternoon. And it saved his mother's life.